Welcome and thank you for tuning in to this episode of Evidently You're Unaware. I am Andrea, your host, also known as the Successful Diva. I am glad that you're here because a few weeks ago I aired an episode titled The SAVE Act, HR 22, and today we are going to give you an update on that bill. I am aiming through this platform to bring your attention and your awareness, elevate it all the way up on topics, issues, and circumstances that matter. Those things that have direct impact on your life, my life, the lives of those in this country and the world. And I don't want to just bring them right into your peripheral view. I want them in your central vision because sometimes things seem to just kind of go over our heads and then we go, uh-oh, we didn't know that. And so I hope that anytime you're here, you are preparing to elevate your awareness and get smarter. So let's do exactly that. The SAVE Act, HR 22, in its full name called the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, was introduced by Chip Roy, who represents Texas's 21st district. Its primary intention is to require individuals to present in person documentary proof of citizenship when registering to vote. If it becomes law, the SAVE Act would require Americans to provide a birth certificate, passport, or other citizenship document to register or re-register to vote. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. Proof of citizenship means a document that shows a person's place of birth. What documents commonly display a person's place of birth? Birth certificates, passports, military IDs, and the like. In case you missed, I referenced the first episode of the SAVE Act. Be sure, there's a link here in this podcast feed. Click on it. Let's go back, watch it again, because in that episode, there's much more detail on the multiple layers of changes that would happen in voter registration and how people can register should this occur, should this bill pass. So please be sure you go back and tune in. But let me just say this. Apparently, there are some politicians, those who are obviously pushing for this to move forward, who want to lower voter turnout. It's voter suppression at its finest. They not only want to lower turnout, but they also want to pretty much maintain their positions. At least that's what they think. Voting is your superpower. I'll just say that. And the other thing that this bill or this legislation is to do, and that is, it's saying, you know what, we want to pick, as a politician, we want to pick our voters. We don't want to go out and actually advocate for the things that make your lives better. The politician is saying, we want to pick our voters, and rather than do the work to earn the vote, we will just suppress the vote. So what I want to share is something that just simply is going to be what you want to hear. This is the finally got the quiet part out loud, I guess, if you can say. But let's listen. Mike Johnson, and let's listen to this exchange.
Anticipated turnout.
Well, we thought it would be 12, but it looked like it might be 18%.
That'd be huge for us.
This is why voting matters and why Republicans are so eager to try to stop it. This is Governor of Louisiana Jeff Landry assuring Speaker of the House Mike Johnson that the expected voter turnout for their recent election was expected to be low, very low. Well, joke's on him because the people of the Bayou State showed up in numbers to oppose 4 resolutions to the state constitution written by Landry, nearly double the amount of people showed up for this one than they had in previous similar elections. The measures, which included making it easier to charge minors as adults, changing tax regulations that critics said would just benefit the wealthy, allow lawmakers to create their own courts and undermine the power of actual judges, and changing election dates to ensure less voter turnout, all failed. So things like the SAVE Act that requires in-person documentation for people to vote, and all of the other voter suppression tools Republicans use, like making mail-in ballots more complicated, refusing water to people who are waiting in line to vote, gerrymandering districts in their favor, are proof they know our power. It's easy to think voting, especially in small elections doesn't matter, but if our voices didn't scare them, why are they trying to suppress them this much?
Why are they trying to suppress them this much? That video, produced by a group called Now This Impact, is just simply one of several states. Now, the bill was introduced, as you've heard me say, by Chip Roy, but all of the Republicans voted for this bill to pass. So let me give you some update and let me give you some of the stats. The SAVE Act passed the U.S. House of Representatives by a 220 to 208 vote, 220 to 208 vote. It is now in the hands of the Republican-led Senate. This bill, now that it's in the Senate, would need 60 votes to overcome a filibuster. However, let me just say it again. All Republicans voted for this bill, and it is now all Republicans in the House. Let me be clear and be specific. It is now over into the Republican-led Senate. And if you need more information on that, there's also another episode showing you how bills move through the House and the Senate and back and forth. But that you can go back and watch. Here we are. Let me just go back to the SAVE Act and let's talk about who voted for this. Democrats, 4 of them, voted for this bill, and 0 Republicans, as I've mentioned, opposed it. So to my viewers, in those states, you see them listed here: Maine, Washington, Texas, Ed case in Hawaii, Maine, Washington, Texas, and Hawaii. Your representative joined Republicans in the House and voted for this bill. You may want to call them and ask them why they have chosen to make it harder for people to register to vote. And you may want to start looking and doing your research. If this doesn't sit well with you, be ready. There will come a time they are going to need your vote again if they want to hold that position, and you have to make the decision whether you will give it back to them or not. Even though voting by non-citizens is illegal and can lead to felony charges and deportation, Republicans argue that this measure is necessary to ensure that only citizens vote in U.S. elections. Now, hear me good. The SAVE Act would make it harder for over 21 million individuals to register to vote because they most likely do not have or are unable to access the additional documents required to prove their citizenship. Remember the key phrase, proof of citizenship. 21 million will not have access to those documents. Which groups comprise those 21 millions? Well, you guessed it. People of color, women who marry, who will change their names, most do, no longer matching their birth certificate, and so forth and so on. Youth, young people registering to vote may not have access to that, and or seniors may not have access. They have to re-register. They may not have access or be able to pull out immunization records where it shows their proof of citizenship. Now, next area you may say, this may be going through your mind, Andrea, I'm an engaged voter. I'm active. I'm registered to vote now, all of the like. I get it. But let me give you a stat from the Brennan Center for Justice. And here it is. The SAVE Act, if between now and the 2028 election, the Brennan Center for Justice says millions of active and engaged voters who lack access to the requirement and the required documentation to prove their citizenship, many of them, millions, they say, will move. And what does moving do? You guessed it, requires you to re-register to vote. And so if you do not have access, even though you were engaged in Georgia and you moved to California and you want to register over in California, but you, and this bill passes, you will now have to prove your citizenship in the United States to register in that new place for which you are now living. So let's look at some other stats. I love stats. I love to share them with you, and here they are. The Brennan Center for Justice, also reported these stats. More than 37 million people either registered to vote for the first time or updated their registration via mail or online before the 2020 election. Another 17 million did the same thing. First-time voters or updated their registration in the ways that we can do that today. Another 17 million did so before the 2022 election. Look at the opposite. Just 7.7 million people registered at an elections or registrar's office between the 2018 and 2020 elections. Just 7.7 million. And that same category of people who showed up in person to register, that number dropped to 4 million in the 2 years leading into the 2022 election. So the research speaks for itself. There is a direct correlation between the ease of voting and the ease of registering to vote. Let me be clear. There's a direct correlation between the ease of registering to vote and the number of voters on the rolls. The SAVE Act would inevitably cause Americans, citizens, who might actually have the appropriate documents to prove citizenship. They may actually have it, but if they have to go through in-person registration, it just might be enough to disenfranchise them from doing so. And without that ease of completing that re-registration or the first-time registration online or via mail, there may be another drop in the number of registered voters on both sides of the aisle. That fact is the result that the legislative supporters of the SAVE Act is hoping to achieve. So let me say this, Florida, your vote by mail. If you were a person that voted by mail, you've always voted by mail, that standing request expired December 31st, 2024. You must now re-register. Do it today. ASAP. The SAVE Act will change how you will need to do that. And I've already gone through some of the details here in this episode, and please feel free. Visit back at an episode. Drop the link is in the chat or right below. The SAVE Act. The first time I talked about this was when it was just introduced. Now it has been introduced and passed. And here we are. Be sure that you re-request. If you desire to vote by mail, that you get that request in ASAP. Do not delay. There are people fighting against you and millions of Americans that do not want to see you show up and vote for something that actually is in favor, or someone, shall I say, something meaning some kind of amendment or something, a ballot initiative. They don't want you to show up to vote for that, and they don't want you to show up to vote for somebody else that's not in your best interest. So now is the time. I would say if you've got to go through the extra steps to secure a copy of a certified copy of your birth certificate, now's the time. If you do not have and desire to secure a passport, now's the time. You need a certified copy of your birth certificate to apply for a passport. So the two things kind of go hand in hand. I would do it now if that is your circumstance. And I will close with this before I thank you for being a part of this episode. Today's voters, today's elections require a different kind of voter. You as a voter must be engaged and educated on every level, beginning at the local level, but all the way up. You've got to know what's happening all the time. And I'm not saying that you have to dive and take all of your energy and do it. That's why people like me are here. And there are others, many of them, that want to make sure you have the information that is fact-based. But you've got to get engaged because your vote matters. My vote, our vote, it matters. But who is granted our vote is the lifeline of democracy. And ladies and gentlemen, there are people that do not believe in democratic values in the climate that we are living in. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Evidently You're Unaware. Remember, it is to live in ignorance. Got to do something different because the time calls for a different kind of voter. You must elevate your awareness and your consciousness because the decisions that are made at the ballot box impact the lives not only of yourself, but millions of people. Like it or not, we are all living in these felonious times as well as these discriminating attacks against our democracy. We're doing it all together, but we have an opportunity. I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts? Comment, inbox me at Andrea@strategicblueprint.info. Don't forget, you can actually like me at Evidently You're Unaware. My YouTube, subscribe and follow me on Blue Sky at thesuccessfuldiva.bsky.social.
Circumstances and people who influence our lives. The information provided should not be considered advice for legal, health, investments, or the endorsement of an individual or group. Neither the host nor the guest of Evidently You're Unaware is responsible for any losses, damages, or liabilities that may arise from using the information shared within this podcast. All rights reserved. Copyright 2025. Evidently You're Unaware.